Talking season's almost over, and we reached the pinnacle, of course, of talking season in Indianapolis just over the last few days for Big Ten Media Days. We invite all of you to do a little talking as well. Leave your comments and questions there in the chat. We will get to them over the next 60 minutes. We appreciate your support and your contributions as well. Consider the super chat. Give us a like before you get settled in. Share the link there on social media. Two of the very best, expecting one of the three to show up here soon, but we got Kevin Noon right next to me, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Big Me Kickoff podcast as well. Tony Gerderman down below, of course, Buckeye Huddle as well. And, of course, Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. Guys, how we doing?
Doing great.
Made it on well. Back to Indianapolis. Very good. And, Kevin, we'll start with you. I will say this right out of the gate. My overall impression of listening to all those coaches, not that I wouldn't have had this same evaluation before 3 days ago, is that while Jim Harbaugh could be ranked as the best coach in the Big Ten, that's an easy ranking to make. He's the worst speaker of the coaches in the Big Ten. I will say that, but I will let you take it away in regards to anything else you had to take away from the Buckeyes in particular.
Well, I was going to say my high point was being around the voice of college football under the same roof at the same event.
Good to see both of you.
We were able to bully the Big Ten into correcting its error and letting you in the building. But outside of that, I've been covering Big Ten media days for a long time, and it's more of the same. I mean, maybe more drama when you sit there and you look at the Michigan situation with Jim Harbaugh. You look at the obviously the Northwestern situation. You look at some of the rumored stuff about Minnesota. It really drove home that I do not like covering these controversial type things as much as I just enjoy covering football. As for Ryan Day and the players, we learned about a couple of medical retirements, and I think we knew that we're coming along with Grant Toutant and with Avery Henry. They will both medically retire, which should get Ohio State back to 85, maybe 84. We'll see there. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. was Marvin Harrison Jr. Some people not very thrilled that he was wearing blue, even though it was not Michigan blue, but that he was wearing blue at the Colts Stadium. It was much more of a Colts blue at that point. Cade Stover told us, I was there very early during his announcement as he was talking, and he's like, yeah, I really wasn't thrilled that I was picked to be here. He would rather for NIL be paid in tractors rather than anything else. And I never made it over to talk to JT. I never was able to talk to JT Tuimoloau. But, I think hope springs eternal. Right now for the Buckeyes, they're looking forward to getting to the start of spring practice here or fall practice here in about a week. And I don't think we're any closer to knowing who a quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, I didn't get to spend too much time with Marvin because everybody was around him. So I was with the other guys. I did get over to Cade Stover in time to hear Kevin ask Cade Stover, Cade, what is targeting? To which Cade had nobody knows what targeting is. And basically he wishes that they would just, that the rules would allow them to go back to, as he said, teeing off on each other. And that would be his preference of football. And if you know Cade Stover, that is absolutely what his preference would be. And I did like how when he was asked about the NIL, he said, the ideal thing would just be like, whenever we need something on the farm, I could just call up and get it. And they would send it over. And one complaint he had about sometimes when they somebody sent something over, sent a combine over, it was too big. And so these are the problems that NIL has caused for these players and these families. The combines are just too big for the farms that they're working. So we need to dial it back some. I think we could all agree on that. With Ryan Day talking about so many different things with it. This is the first time you get your some updates on the health and the way things, who has done stuff during the summer. That's we will ask about certain players. I think it's always interesting when he brings up players without being asked about specific names, and just some of the names that he mentioned in terms of the freshmen who have had strong summers. Mentioned Luke Montgomery as a guy who's going to be in the mix for the battle at right tackle, which is interesting because Luke Montgomery was the number 3 left tackle in spring. I mentioned Lincoln Keenholz, the quarterback, as just being a guy who has really, really impressed them since he's been on campus, and he's approaching everything the right way. He's a really good athlete. I think the coaches are trying, and this is not just from this week, we've all heard whispers about how much they really, really like him. And Ryan Day got to talk about that a little bit as well. And mentioning Calvin Simpson-Hunt, the freshman cornerback, is another guy who just got here this summer, as a guy who they really, really like. And then he did say, he told all the early enrollees after spring, you guys are no longer freshmen. We consider you guys sophomores now, so it's time to step up.
Steve Hellwagon showing up. Good to see you, Steve.
I'm in Morgantown at a BW3 that doesn't have any internet, so I'm
Are you covering West Virginia now?
I'm driving back from Washington, D.C. I went from Indianapolis home to Washington, D.C. to pick up my daughter, and now we're halfway back. So I don't know what kind of internet we're going to have. So it's kind of spotty. So I'll just mute out a little bit and bring me in when you need me, I guess. I don't know.
Well, we got you now, and Kevin and Tony gave their initial impressions of their takeaways from Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah, it was a lot of what you thought. Minnesota, the coach was well prepared for the allegations that were kind of thrown at him. The poor Northwestern coach, I likened him to Luke Fickell back in 2011, given a poop sandwich to eat in front of the world. And he handled it about as well as you could possibly hope to handle it. Ryan Day stepped in it a little bit, talking about moving the Michigan game. I don't think anybody who's followed Ohio State football for the last 40 years, 50 years, 80 years wants that game moved out of the last Saturday in November. So I think that's going to be a non-starter, I think. That game's going to be there in 100 years in that same spot if they're still doing college football in 100 years. So I don't think that's going to happen. And thankfully, Jim Harbaugh didn't crap on him too hard when he got his opportunity. He's too busy crapping on him each last Saturday in November right now to crap on him too hard about, his misguided attempt. I mean, I get where he's coming from. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma have had to replay their game, and thankfully they play in October, so it's not right the next week. But did the Big 12 have a 7-day rematch in the last year or two? Maybe, I don't know. So there's a precedent for it, but I don't think we're going to see that changed.
It's my remembrance that Jim Harbaugh basically said he doesn't care when they play.
Yeah, he said he had no preference,
but his
no opinion.
His last comment was most of us look forward to it being when it's and he said that's when we'll prepare to play it. So he kind of left it that that's when it's played, and that's when we'll all get ready to play that game. So I love how they both. I love how they both deal with one another and don't mention the other school. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's wise of Jim Harbaugh to prepare to play the game when it is currently scheduled. I mean, that's basically what he said is we'll play it whenever it's scheduled. Ryan Day didn't say he expects it to be moved or anything like that. Ward Manuel and Gene Smith talked about it being moved back in June, had discussions about it earlier this spring and summer. So that's why Ryan Day said there have already been talks about it. And he said, that's all, I thought when he said that, I knew it was going to create a storm. I thought his reasoning behind it was solid in a sense that he would why would you need to move it? You move it so that if you both Michigan and Ohio State have clinched a berth in the Big Ten championship game, you want that game to remain as important as ever. And if nobody needs to win it to advance to the Big Ten championship game, then will somebody rest their starters or something like that? And so the logic is that you can't do that in the middle of the season. And so it remains as important. And so I understand that. My thinking is fix it if it becomes a problem. Don't fix it until it's a problem. And I still don't think I've contended that even if they have to play back to back, or they know that it's been everything has been clinched, I don't think you go into that game looking to take it easy. However, coaches are so paranoid that taking it easy and losing that game might be the advantage that you need to win the conference championship game. So I think there's just a lot of paranoia in that regard, and concern, and maybe trying to overthink some things. But I know Ryan Day got a lot of grief for it, and it's something that no other Ohio State coach has really had to deal with, in terms of the possibility of playing 3 times in a row. So I don't know that we know how Urban or Jim Tressel or John. Well, I think we probably know how John Cooper would have felt about it, but these are new situations, so it's going to cause some discussion about changing some things. But I don't think you need to change it until it becomes a problem, and I'm not convinced it will be a problem.
With the glacier speed that they move at with things, though, I don't think it's wrong to start talking about it, because even if they do have to do back-to-back in 24 and 25, and that's really, saying that USC isn't going to make an impact, Penn State isn't going to get any better, whatever may be. I mean, conference expansion is on its ear right now. Who knows what the conference could look like here in a couple of years. It certainly did tweak a lot of people. I think Ryan Day detractors just used it as more fuel to detract away on him, whereas the people who like him are like, ooh, I don't know why you would go there. But I remember having this discussion several years ago. It didn't feel like it was a brand new thing to me at this point. I mean, that there was the conversation that you could have it. And while we were having a couple of drinks at some point, we talked about how many times we've had that Ohio State-Michigan matchup in the postseason. And that's been none, even during Leaders and Legends. How many times have we seen Florida State, Miami in the ACC? That answer would be none as well. So, you kind of need to see it before you have to do that. But I also think that not at least getting, a little due diligence done now, I mean, I think that would probably be problematic too, because we know how quickly conferences and programs and everything else are willing to move.
Because all that has to happen is that one of them takes a step back, or with USC, Penn State, and others, certainly, they play varsity football as well, that we go 3 consecutive years and we don't have Ohio State, Michigan playing in a championship game, and they play in the middle of October, and people are going to be like, what's going on here? So nobody can forecast the future. It's a tough call, but I'd like to see it continue on the last weekend of the season.
Well, the thing is, they schedule 2 years out in advance, so it's like they can make pretty quick changes. These aren't 7 years out and then, we'll see how things go. I just don't think you need to change anything right now until you know it's an issue. But I do, like Chocolate Bonnie fan 24 saying Day doesn't understand the game. The reason he wants to move it is so that it stays as important as it has always been. That comes from an understanding of the rivalry, in my opinion. And I've seen people saying he's scared or he's a coward or whatever. It's like, you still have to play the game. He's not the one that is responsible for canceling a game. He's the one, they're still going to play the game. He's just trying to keep it as important as it has always been. And with the importance of the growing importance of the playoffs, it's, I think everybody knows it diminishes the regular season. And how would it diminish that game when neither team needs to win it? And college football has changed. It used to be your season was determined by who wins that Michigan-Ohio State game. That no longer, that doesn't determine your season necessarily. If Ohio State wins a national championship last year, does anybody care that Michigan beat them other than Michigan fans?
Well, you've got you're arguing the tangible versus the emotional and the tradition.
And college football is the tradition.
Yeah, college football is becoming more and more like the NFL, where just the final result, the Ravens beat the Steelers twice in the regular season, but then they lost the AFC champion. It doesn't matter. And we're headed toward that in that direction. But there will be many of us purists and diehards that will still, be more emotional and invested in the game than whatever the playoff result is. So you can't please everyone. And we apparently, as media, look past Ryan Day's many faults, according to Chocolate Bonnie Fan 24. I don't know what those are. He's lost 2 games to Michigan. Those are basically his faults during this tenure at Ohio State. That's pretty much it.
And we had somebody on our board mention that he's 1-5 against top 5 teams. And, you consider one of those is a loss by a missed field goal. Another one is the overturned game from Clemson with that fumble pickup that, that game, if Chris Olave catches a post route in that game, that changes things. Of course, they got obliterated by Alabama. That was a COVID season, but they have been pounded by Michigan. So that right now is the definer for Ryan Day. It's those 2 Michigan games. You lose to the national champion. 3 of in 3 of those losses. It is what it is. Don't lose to your rivals in the fashion that they've lost to them.
You guys taking this Big Ten Media Days on every year are more accustomed to this. I haven't been in that setting for about 20 years, aside from American Conference Media Days, and that's a whole different deal. I was more assessing, in addition to what they had to say, was just the presentation. So on one end of the scale, you've got Matt Rule, who will tell you anything. He's just gabbing constantly, tells you things you don't want to know. And I say that in a positive light. I found him extremely entertaining and transparent. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I don't know what always to make of Jim Harbaugh. And when I got on here at the Open and said that he's the worst communicator in the Big Ten among coaches, that's, of course, just my opinion. He's a very smart guy. He's a great coach. But just these 8-second delays after every question, and then he basically says, if they're talking about JJ McCarthy, he's good, really like what he's doing, right? His teammates love him. Every answer is the same, and I just don't get a whole lot out of that. Ryan Day somewhere in the middle, like he is coach speak, but he explains things. He's not going to say anything that's controversial or ruffle any feathers or be too transparent, give you too much information, but he explains. He's thoughtful and gives you an explanation. Just my take on the coach's approach. And PJ Fleck always entertains me, and I know Kevin can't stand PJ Fleck, but
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but god dang, he is exhausting to watch. And during his presser at the main podium, I was like, all right, when's somebody going to ask? And you generally don't want to come out question one, because then you might cause the coach to shut down for the remainder of it. But, we got the softballs, and then finally somebody went at it. And as Tony had said, he was well drilled. He went through all of his points and everything else and talked about the misnomer of the Fleck Bank and some things like that. But, yeah, with Ryan, Ryan is a little bit different of a communicator than his predecessors at Ohio State. I mean, Urban was brutally honest at times. I mean, he would hold things back that he didn't want to talk about, but he would come right out. This room's a clown show, those types of things. And then you, of course, the great Jim Tressel, and from one of the documentaries about, you could ask him the time and he would tell you how to build a clock, but he would never tell you what time it was. I think that was all very true as well. And then you got Ryan Day, who's kind of somewhere in the middle. He has his things that he doesn't like to talk about, injuries being one of them. But I think in that type of setting, like a Big Ten Media Days, where you get 45 minutes with him, if you get the opportunity to get a couple of questions in a row, I think you can lead them down a path to be able to get some information. But, at the more controlled settings, like at the Woody, when you get one and maybe a follow-up, yeah, it's not a kind of type of stuff.
Harbaugh is much more at ease now. I think after winning the Big Ten 2 years in a row, he's not as pensive coming to these things. Now, he did have to dodge the questions about his NCAA violations, which, seems like in this era where they're buying players left and right, to buy a kid a cheeseburger doesn't seem like it's that big of a freaking deal. But, I think that he really was effusive in his praise of JJ McCarthy. He said he's a generational quarterback, a guy that, you don't get very often. And, really really propped him up, I thought. So that was kind of a different thing, I think, for Harbaugh to do. But, and of course, he's got Blake Corum he can talk up as well. And the other running back, Donovan Edwards, who ran for 1,000,000 yards against Ohio State. So I don't know. He's come out of his shell a little bit. And, at the same time, he certainly was having, other than to say he had nothing to be ashamed of, he didn't say anything much about the NCAA situation. So he's a different Jim Harbaugh, I think, than he was maybe 5 years ago when he was just, he wanted nothing to do with communicating with anybody, it seemed like. So I don't know.
He was more adversarial in the past, but to me, it's exhausting being there and listening to him. I can't do it anymore. Because you're there, you're paying attention, you're trying to learn in terms of everything he's trying to tell you, and it doesn't work for me. And it is, Mark, you are exactly right. It's like these 8-second pauses, and you're like, it's kind of how do you keep an idiot in suspense? We're all there, like, we are the idiots and we are in suspense. And then he just, gives you some coach speak. And I was on the radio yesterday after everything, and they're like, how has it changed over the years? I'm like, well, now you have a whole bunch of head coaches doing their darndest to not say anything at all while being questioned for an hour straight. And some guys, like I think you just talked about Matt Rule. I thought Matt Rule was fantastic. That was my first experience being around him, and he was completely open and would answer whatever you wanted to know, and we like the coaches that will give us a bunch of words that we can then use. And he did that. But I go back to, like, my first one was 2006 where Glenn Mason, after he got done with his thing, sitting around the tables, he went and sat down at somebody else's table, like still wanting to talk some more. And this is, you would never see that these days. I did not get to check out the Northwestern David Braun thing on Wednesday because he was going at the same time as Ryan Day, so I would have been interested to see what that was. I know the crowd sizes were about the same for those two coaches, which was interesting. But yeah, it's Day. He will give you just enough. Doesn't want to give you too much, but it's stuff that you can work with. So there's at least that. But he doesn't want to give you more than you need.
I thought in the press conference, the Northwestern coach got a question from, I think, a female reporter asking about specific allegations about assistant coaches who are still on the staff who may have been involved in the hazing. And, if anybody's read the stories, they had this thing about getting run. And I don't want to go into what that means, but it was part of the hazing. And the two assistant coaches had maybe messed up one day, and the team voted, and the coaches had to get run. And that was, if they're actively participating in it, then how can they still be on the staff is kind of the overarching question. So this is the gift that's going to keep on giving, I think, all season long, is who did what, who knew what when. The other thing, back on Harbaugh, my buddy John Borton from the Wolverine, with this NCAA thing and everything else that's been hanging over Harbaugh's head, his first question was about the, healthy tailback, or a football question. Like, he made sure, I'm the beat reporter. I don't give a crap about that other stuff. Tell me about your tailback, or whatever the position was. It was like, it was just vintage. I was over there cheering for the guy. Yes, get the football questions in before he completely goes into a shell and says, no, I'm done. I'm out. I'm done. So that was vintage. I thought that's out of the old playbook. It's like, whatever, somebody's got a major problem, whatever. Let's don't start with that. Let's start with an innocuous personnel question, and he took it and ran with it. He was like, a football question? Well, by all means, I'll answer all the football questions you have, whereas in the past he would have, peered out at you. Oh, we've got tailbacks. We've got wide receivers too, that would have been it.
It's hard not to jump around in this situation and keep the conversation, of course, in order. So I'm going to jump back to Harbaugh and play off something that Tony said in regards to what might have been the most telling response was when he completely did not acknowledge somebody's question. He forgot it. He didn't listen to it when somebody asked him a question. I think about it was about JJ McCarthy. I don't remember exactly, just about his development. And it was a very specific, decent question. And Harbaugh just had, we've all been there in life when we were in a conversation and not listening. And then 90% of the time you can talk your way out of it. You can still act like you were listening, but he got caught and it was like, I don't even know what you're talking. I don't even know what you said. Can you back up? My mind was somewhere else. I was like thinking about something else. So I thought that might be the most telling thing, because that's probably what's going on this entire time, or the majority of this time. He's just able to fake his way through some of it. And thus the 8-second response, or the 8-second delays. We got Ryan Doss here. Appreciate your contributions, sir. So Ryan is asking, and we will start with Kevin, who was your favorite non-Buckeye player, I'm assuming, to interview?
Well, since I'm mostly focused on coaches, there was really only three players that I listened to, and two of them were Ohio State players, and one of them was from that team up north. So by process of elimination, I would have to say Blake Corum, because otherwise, the only other players I really listened to were Marvin and Cade Stover. A lot of good stuff from Corum about being healthy, that he just gone to the doctor and is cleared. And then a lot of Michigan reporters are like, now, are you officially cleared? And he's like, well, I think I am. I guess maybe I need to go have another conversation. Was talked about moving the Michigan game, the Michigan-Ohio State game, and he's like, I'll play it whenever. Well, what if it's back-to-back? I don't care about that. I'm going to come out and play as hard in the first one as I am in the second one. Somebody who seems really appreciative to have another opportunity to be able to get out there and have another season of college football, especially as a hot button issue in terms of the NFL right now is running back pay, as the pendulum has moved back in the other direction, where we thought we were going to see running backs becoming back in vogue with where Bijan Robinson went and guys like that. And now guys that have been in the league for a while are just not happy with where their pay is. That doesn't seem to be a case for Blake Corum, who seems to be doing good with his money right now.
I like Chris Ottman-Bell from Minnesota. He jumped right in and defended PJ Fleck and sounded genuine about it. Like, this isn't for everybody. And said that Fleck's done so much for him. He's in like his 5th or 6th year at Minnesota, and he jumped right in and with both feet. And as you'd expect, he's one of the leaders of the team, and they bring him to Chicago or to Indianapolis, and he's not coming there to throw the coach under the bus, certainly. So I guess, if the only people who were quoted in the initial article by Front Office Sports were disgruntled people, then we need to listen to the other side too, I guess. And I was impressed with his defense of PJ Fleck.
Yeah, that was one that I talked with, or was there for a little bit as well. And this is his 7th year. He's a 7th-year senior at Minnesota, and he was originally committed to Fleck at Western Michigan. And so I guess when Fleck left Western Michigan for Minnesota, one of the questions was, when did you buy in with PJ Fleck? He's like, I bought in with him immediately, when he was going to go to Western Michigan. And then when Fleck left for Minnesota, he's like, then I bought out for a little bit. But then PJ and then Coach Fleck gave me a call back, and I bought in again. And yeah, he was very not defensive, but he defended his head coach. I was talking with the 3 transfer quarterbacks that were there on Thursday: Hudson Card of Purdue, Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin, and Nebraska's quarterback, who is named Jeff, just slips me right now.
Sims.
Yeah, Jeff Sims, thank you. Just asking them about what life is like in the portal and that whole experience. How much are you getting blown up and things like that, and how much are you checking and refreshing? And Jeff Sims says it can be kind of scary in there because you don't know what you're necessarily getting into. Whereas Tanner Mordecai said you have to go in with a plan. And I'm like, how do you go in with a plan? And necessarily, unless unless you know where you want to go. And it sounds like some guys go in knowing where they want to go. And I'm not going to throw any shenanigans in there, but I think we all know there are back channels in there. And I think the best advice, maybe have the back channels before you go in. So those three guys, just talking about what life is like and the decision to move on and what you're looking for. And all three of them seem to have found exactly what they're looking for. So it'll be interesting to watch how they do in the Big Ten West this year.
I probably gained the most from Talia Tagovailoa just because everybody left, and I just stood there in front of the table and just did a one-on-one with him, basically. And
there was nobody there when I saw him.
Yeah,
like he was talking to SIDs basically.
Yeah,
when I
surprised
the
me.
Maryland beat didn't show up. There was really nobody on the Maryland beat there.
Well, this is the problem when it's not held in Chicago. It's 2 flights for those people to get. There's no really. I mean, there's probably not a lot of directs. No, there's probably. Southwest probably has directs from Baltimore from BWI to Indianapolis as I think about it, but they're not prevalent. You know, there's like 1 a day or 2 a day or something. So, I don't know. To me, it's like going to Minneapolis for this basketball tournament. I think Delta runs some directs from Columbus to Minneapolis, but they're few and far between. So, and they're probably more expensive. So, people look at the cost value of going. I mean, we have TV stations from Columbus. They don't pay for a hotel for their people. They get up at 5 a.m. They drive out, they cover it. And when the 6 o'clock news is off the air, they get in the car, they drive back. And those are the TV stations. The network television stations in Columbus do not come and staff it and stay overnight. So that just tells you, you know, what people value this thing at right now.
Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our Ohio State live show. Typically do it on Wednesday. Of course, these three gentlemen and myself were in Indianapolis for the Big Ten Media Days this week. Therefore, here we are on a Friday. So I appreciate Kevin, Tony, and Steve still making time this week, despite being in Indy for 3 days, to talk Ohio State football, of course, with Media Days in our rear view mirror and straight ahead. Fall camp starts on the 1st?
The 3rd, whatever Thursday is.
Okay. Thursday, the 3rd. I believe that is correct. Okay. Very good there.
Yeah, we'll be there Thursday and Friday. It's going to be open to the media. The first 2 practices are open to the media because they're also open to ticket purchasers, and those tickets have been sold. So unless you already have yours, you can't go to practice unless I wonder if you can scalp them. I wonder if they're on StubHub or something like that. The practice tickets for $30 a pop.
What'd they sell? 500 tickets for $30 a piece for both days. So that's 15 grand, 15 grand. That's 30 grand. That won't even buy you a good long snapper in NIL. I don't understand. They're saying this money's going to go toward NIL. It's like it's going to go to paying the person who writes the NIL checks for whoever's getting them. I mean, 30 grand ain't gonna get you through the door. I mean, what is that? That's if they had the stadium, they would have raised a couple million, you know. I don't know.
You got to test the market and see what people are willing to pay.
Yeah, you're right. First year we raised 30 grand. Next year it'll be 300 grand. Year after that, 3 million. So yeah, to watch a practice. And what these people need to understand, and they're gonna be wearing helmets, they're going to be wearing jerseys, they're going to be wearing shorts. There ain't going to be no hitting. And, you know, it ain't going to be football. I can tell you that. So, but it'll be the guys. So, we'll see.
They really should. I wouldn't be surprised if next year it is in the shoe and they just sell as many as they can. And because these are the first 2 practices, no opponent could learn anything from these 2 practices. So it's like there's no harm in letting as many people in as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens because they sold out really, really quickly of just these 1,000 total tickets. But do you want to practice in front of 2,500 people in a shoe and it looks like it's completely empty? Or, you know, I don't think it really matters as long as you're getting some sort of money. It's better than no sort of money.
Did our new Big Ten Commissioner, Tony Petitti, say anything that mattered? Somebody in the chat's calling him a horse's ass. I believe that has to do with him possibly messing around with the game. But did he give any indication? I got to say, when he was at the podium, I'm running around setting things up, interviewing Todd Blackledge or whatever. So I didn't take in his intro to the entire event. But anything from Petiti that meant anything?
I can't think of a single thing.
I mean, yeah, I mean, he came out, and I mean, this was the day before or really just even hours before the Colorado stuff really started to take hold or whatever. Been asked about expansion, and like I work at the kind of at the pleasure of the chancellors and presidents, and the focus is the integration of USC and UCLA into the conference, and it didn't seem like any of the conversation was geared toward looking at any expansion targets or anything of that nature. I mean, we didn't really get a lot more insight on where the media rights deal is with the hiccups, I'll just use that term, that happened in the departure of Kevin Warren and things not necessarily being fully executed. But I mean, other than that, it was just a lot of commissioner speak. If we have coach speak, we got commissioner speak, and it was a lot of commissioner speak. And I don't know, I was tired, and nothing really resonated.
Former
Go ahead,
television
Steve.
Executive, very polished, a former television executive. And I asked him, in the Pete Demel story that kind of broke wide open the messy transition from Warren to Petiti and everything that was left undone in this great new television deal, that I asked, is there going to be better collaboration with the schools? You're not just going to hand them a mandate from Chicago and say you are going to play on this day at this time, when they don't want to play at that date and that time. And kind of him-hawed around that, kind of said, well, it's kind of like, we got to crack a few eggs and make an omelet here. And we gave these NBC and CBS, and they're paying us top thing. And I don't want to say the gist of it was to hell with the fans going to the stadium, but the gist of it was kind of like the hell with the fans going to the stadium. So it's all a TV show. So I tried to stand up for the fans, so whatever. But, again, he's an impressive guy. I think he knows his stuff through and through. And I think that episode, trained him that, hey, we do need to have a little bit better communication with the people down on the farm, in West Lafayette, East Lansing, and Columbus, and wherever else, and not just drop these lightning bolts that everybody disavows any knowledge of in the hindsight. So I think and I hope that things will be better in the future. I think he's got a real problem on his hands with this basketball tournament. I don't know how you logistically come up with that, other than making it like a 5 or 6 day event. I don't know what you do there, but that's one of the many Olympic sports issues that they're going to have to resolve going forward. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I know that Day, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Petiti made the comment that having games on Fox and then CBS and then NBC, once it all gets ironed out a year from now, CBS still has to do the SEC in mid-afternoon. You have unprecedented coverage. Nobody's ever been on 3 broadcast networks at one time. And that's important because the broadcast networks are still over the air, still in 110 or 115 million homes, whereas everyone pulled plug on cable. ESPN's down in the 70s now, Fox Sports 1 in the 70s, Big Ten probably in less than that. So you get much wider distribution being on network television, and they're the only league that can say that. So that to me is impressive.
Yakov, appreciate you being here. What you got for us? If Kyle McCord is a 2024 first rounder, has Ohio State won a national championship? I don't believe they won one last year, and that's still converted to the NFL draft for CJ Stroud, but go to it, guys.
I'm going to take off the mute. I'm going to say yes, because everybody assumes that if Kyle McCord is the starter this year, that he's going to be a one and done. I think we've seen the history, though, that one-year starters in college do not equate very well to the NFL. But I think if Ohio State wins the title, we're going to see a mass exodus, quarterback included. So, if Ohio State comes up close, which has kind of been its calling card as of late, there could be the desire to come back for one more run, get that second year. I mean, of course, what does that mean for Devin Brown, who would have to sit for a couple of years there? Does he go off to greener pastures? But if Kyle McCord is a first-round quarterback there, I think that is a heavy indication that Ohio State has won a title.
I was with you, Mark. It didn't matter with Dwayne Haskins. It didn't matter with Justin Fields. It didn't matter with CJ Stroud. However, as Kevin explains it, and I'm actually listening to him, he's making some good points, which I'm shocked by. But I do think with the defense as it should be better, and if Kyle McCord plays well enough to be a first rounder, that tells me also the offensive line has stepped up and played well, and tells me that if he's a first rounder, the offense is clicking, the defense will be improved. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I'd say I'd say nobody would want to play him if he's a first rounder. I'll put it that way.
All right. Appreciate y'all being here. Buckeyes Live, typically on Wednesday, coming your way on a Friday this week. And of course, the next time we get together will be a day or two right before fall camp. And that will be open to all of you to attend for the first time ever, correct? Gotta be.
Yeah, going back a long time. Yeah, Jim Tressel had some open practices in his first year too, but after they won the national championship, it was like, we don't need you anymore. And that was that. Boom.
Kevin, what do you got working there at Buckeye Huddle and on your podcast as well?
Well, at this point, I'm gearing up for the upcoming Summer Slam in the Shoe, or whatever they're calling it, the big recruiting event tonight, just hopefully getting some updates from what's going to happen there. And then on Sunday, Aaron Scott makes his announcement, and that seems like it's going to be a dinner time announcement. And the plan is to head west to Springfield and work on that. Outside of that, I mean, it's really kind of getting into game mode. I'm going to have to sit there and say, all right, I'm not as focused on video, and actually have to start turning some written content, probably start doing some preseason superlatives and things of that nature coming up here in the next week. And before you know it, we'll start to have player interviews and actual, seasonal football content.
Tony.
I already posted a couple stories today. One was Ryan Day talking about the freshmen who have stood out already over the summer, and then also finished up my ranking of the top 10 offensive playmakers for the Buckeyes this year. Surprise number 1, Marvin Harrison. Shocking, I know. Now I'm just going to go through the rest of, whatever everybody had to say, because I still haven't gone through and listened to what Marvin Harrison had to say and what JT Tuimoloau had to say. So I'll check that out and, write some stories from that and some stuff that Ryan Day had to say. Probably also time to throw a thoughts column up as well, based on what everybody heard. I do think, not to distract us here, and we'll get to Steve. We'll get to Steve when we get to him. The Tony Petitti thing, talking about the networks, I was asking the coaches about how that's going to impact their recruiting, and they, like, Matt Rule, PJ Fleck, absolutely thrilled about it. They're going to be everywhere, and that's going to be something that I think helps all of those formerly Big Ten West schools.
All you have to do is listen to Gary Danielson at the start of the whole deal, spit out some of those matchups that we're going to see on CBS, and you got to think those games would have never been anywhere other than the Big Ten Network before this deal. Northwestern and Rutgers on CBS. So Minnesota, PJ Fleck, this is a gold mine for you. Yes.
Rutgers and Northwestern. Do I have to remind you that's market 1 and market 3. And I mean, we all know our market ratings. I mean, that's big time. I mean, okay, maybe 12 people will turn it on and a nursing home may have it left on and nobody's going to watch it. But I mean, these are huge markets.
Yeah, CBS is a good network to have for your college football package for in the nursing homes, because there's a lot of leftover, if they keep that TV rolling, you're going to pick up some views there.
Well, CBS has never really cared about markets, being that most of the SEC schools are in the 160s.
It means more there, though, Tony. It definitely means more.
Well, we can't wrap up a show without can't take Kevin off the hook for a recruiting update, since we were reminded about Aaron Scott on Sunday. Kevin, is there anything out there worth talking about? Targets? Any other announcements?
Well, I'll be interested to see what comes out of tonight. I mean, it's still a little early for a lot of 25s to be moving, but there could be some players there that are motivated to speed things up. The 24 kids are going to be there, as well as 2023 Northwestern signee Nigel Glover, who has entered the transfer portal. He is somebody to keep an eye on. He's already visited Kentucky. He will official to Ohio State, which is going on now, and then has a Michigan official, but Ohio State will probably try to get him to just commit and not even bother taking that Michigan official, an Ohioan who, of course, are going to people are going to say, well, why didn't you take him the first time around? Well, you have an opportunity to take him this time around. So if the coaches are moved there, then they're going to do that. Obviously, Aaron Scott is going to be on Sunday, and then we have KJ Bolden coming up here the following week. And of course, people are going to be like, are they going to land him? And I will say, as always, I don't know.
I think there was some news from Indianapolis about Grant Toutant retiring from football and Avery Henry unable to play football going forward after treatment for bone cancer. So I think that gets them down in the 85-86 range. But obviously, if they take this kid who had signed with Northwestern, then I think they may still be one, or if you count Lorenzo Styles, maybe even two still over. I don't know. I haven't crunched the numbers entirely, but they're getting closer to where they need to be with that 85 limit. And I figure you can't have 86 players on the practice field Thursday, I guess, has become the new rule. So, because they've been floating 86 or 87 for a while here, but at least externally, I don't know. I mean, who knows what the rules are anymore? I don't think there are any rules. I don't think there's any. I think the NCAA, other than putting on a basketball tournament, doesn't even really exist anymore. So who knows?
And Steve, you never got to really fully pursue your mission for Big Ten Media Days, and that was tracking down the head of the officiating.
No, au contraire. They made him available yesterday afternoon, right as I was walking out the door. He was sitting down. So I went over. We did get time with him. He clarified he thought it should have been a personal foul with targeting, and then when they pulled the targeting off, the personal foul would have still prevailed for unnecessary roughness, first and goal at the 3-yard line, punch it in, game over, game over, game over, game over. Georgia wasn't coming back from that. So to me, I would agree with him. I said, I even used our friend Doug Lay Maurice as my dummy. I said, when they break this down frame by frame, is this pulled back because his first contact appears to be here and not here? Although, and then Carrillo took the ball and said, that could be, but he definitely seems to make contact with the head. I mean, Bill was throwing whatever it was, the Pac-12 directly under the bus, and I was there for it. So, yeah, it was good. It was good. I'm going to write about it. I haven't gotten around to it. This trip to DC, don't get married, don't have kids, because there's a lot of obligations that go along with that, including driving 3 hours, 4 hours from Indiana to Pataskala, and then Pataskala to DC was another 5 hours last night, and then I'm on the road today about 7 hours. So, yeah, don't ever get married, don't ever have kids, but if you do, understand there's some obligations that go with it.
Carrillo also mentioned there was a definite launch in there as well, so he was fully on board
Yes.
with that. Should have
Yes.
been a penalty.
I forgot that part. That is, to me, the launch says everything, guys. If people are leaving, launching into somebody, that's freaking targeting 10 times out of 10. The OHSAA has come out with a thing telling officials on their games, they don't have replay. They said if somebody comes at somebody like this and is trying to make a play on the ball, that's probably legal. If somebody is coming at somebody like this and not trying to make a play on the ball, and it appears they've come a little high, that's probably targeting. Boy, oh boy, how much common sense do we need?
We've got Ryan Dawes, and his common sense question is, which will happen first, more scholarships or more assistant coaches?
Coaches, because I think there's already been kind of a framework that has been discussed that is there. I mean, hell, I've heard somebody as recently as a couple years ago who tried to advocate for fewer scholarships. So I think that more coaches is there because that becomes a lot more of a voluntary issue depending on what level you're truly competing at. I don't think that any program, if we go up from like 85 to let's just say 90 even, that they're going to be programs that are like, well, that's all well and good, but we're only going to fund 85 scholarships. I think that you're going to have programs that are going to sit there, and if you say that you can go from 10 to 15, let's not even make it unlimited, but let's just add a significant percentage to it. You're still going to probably have some schools that are going to roll at 10 or 11 or 12. I don't think there's as much of a necessity to get to 15 if you're just there just to be part of the ride. But I don't think that anybody's necessarily going to leave scholarships on the table. And I think you're going to see more pushback from the membership of Division I FBS to do that because a lot of places are not necessarily rolling in the dough.
Yeah, I'd like to see Big Ten Power 5 go to 88 maybe, just to alleviate some of this pressure. And maybe MAC, those schools go down to 82 maybe, just because they can't afford it. And as far as the coaches, yeah, I think they're going to 11, just a matter of when. Do you need more than 11? I don't know. You got more money than God, so.
I think Ohio State would love to have 11. That way they could get James Laurinaitis out on the road recruiting right now. I think if you raise the scholarship limit to 88 or 90, they're going to go to camp with 94, or they're going to spend all summer with 94. They're always going to push as far as possible. I think if you raise the limit to say 90, that just takes away from the lower levels, and it's just the bigger schools hoarding players that could be playing somewhere else at a lower level. And I think we're trying to be more inclusive with the college football. That's what the 12-team playoff is for. So, I don't think you'll have some schools argue that we need more players because there are more games being played. And so, it's safer if we have more players, and that's a legitimate argument. But you don't have to, you can play freshmen. You don't have to redshirt people. You don't have to be stingy with who you play. You've got enough guys to play more. You just want to have more options to play the better players. It's not necessarily about safety. There's a little bit about safety, but you also want more skill. You're more concerned about putting worse players on the field, not more players on the field. And so I don't think you need to raise it. I think if you're concerned about player safety, play the guys that aren't, play more players. And if there are mistakes, that's, I guess, on the coaches and the recruiting.
You can catch Kevin's work, BuckeyeHuddle.com, and also the Big Me Kickoff podcast. For Tony, it's Buckeye Huddle, and it's also Buckeye Weekly is the podcast that's more than weekly. So Buckeye Weekly for Tony as well, and I believe Kevin makes his appearances on there as well. Do we still have College Football Playbook in full gear right here on YouTube, everyone? College Football Playbook, check it out. Steve, we always appreciate him posting our weekly live streams on Bucknuts 247 Sports. Steve, anything on Bucknuts that needs to be highlighted besides your trip back and forth across the eastern half of the United States?
Well, prior to this, we spent the last 2 months moving from one house to another. So we're finally in our new house, and it's all good there. So just in time for the start of football season, I have to say, I was a little bit dismayed having to go to Indianapolis. Just kind of a lot of trepidation, like the monotony of the whole thing. But I came away from it kind of energized, I think, by the whole scene there, and ready for football and this new direction that things are headed. I mean, the only constant in this sport right now is the change, and that's what we're kind of leaning into right now is the huge changes that are coming ahead. And I look at what Ohio State and Michigan have done, and I talked to some of our people at our Michigan site, and it's just kind of like Ohio State and Michigan are built to be in this 12-team playoff 4 times out of every 5 years going forward if Michigan's able to maintain this. And that's kind of how we both saw it. So, barring something unforeseen, let the good times roll, babe.
So you're telling us that Ryan Day is bringing down this program if they're only going to make the playoff 4 out of 5 years.
Yeah, that won't be good enough. Concrete's going to burn over there at Keenan Drive and Woody Hayes Drive. But and they lost out on, I can't pronounce it, Kingston Villayamo Asa here last week from California, went to Notre Dame. A lot of it was spiritually involved, I guess, some thoughts about what Notre Dame could do for him, whatever. The one thing Notre Dame can't do for him is give him a top 4 seed in the playoff because they are not in a conference. They can't win a conference championship, and you don't win a conference championship, you can't be a top 4 seed. So he'll never be a top 4 seed in the playoff. Good luck with all that. Of course, they don't play a conference championship games, so I guess it cuts both ways. But I don't know. Does Notre Dame have open linebacker spots? Because I think this is the last year that Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers will be playing at Ohio State. You figure C.J. Hicks will have one of them, but the other one's wide open. So I don't know. Maybe that 2 linebacker set worked against Ohio State in that regard. But that was a news item from this past week, and I just shared my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, the playoff math has never worked for Notre Dame. They've not been able to win 1, let alone 3 or 4. So that's the way it's been for them, folks.
They haven't beaten a Power 5 team in a bowl game since what, 94 against Texas A&M? 3 decades. They haven't beaten a Power 5 team in a bowl game in 3 decades, and they're going to try and win 4. Going to try and win 4 of them in the span of 4 or 5 weeks.
Folks, Minkin, I'm back next week. We can't guarantee the day or time, but if you subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live, you will be locked in here. For Kevin, for Tony, for Steve, of course, voice of college football, we appreciate you being here.